Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Education meeting of September 11, 2017. Thank you for attending tonight's meeting of the Westerville City Schools Board of Education. The agenda will be displayed on the screens in the front of the room. You may also follow along by connecting to the district's website, wcsoh.org. Click on our district link, then select Board of Education, then Board Docs Agenda, and select this evening's meeting. There will be two opportunities to address the board this evening, the first being Agenda Item 6.01. The first set of public comments is relative to Agenda Items 7.01 through 11.02. Please state the agenda items you are referencing at the beginning of your comments. The second opportunity is Agenda Item 12.01. There is a sign-up sheet located on the table at the back of the room. Each speaker will have 5 minutes to address the board. And with that, Mr. Griffith, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Byrd?
Here.
Ms. Cotter?
Here.
Mrs. Davidson?
Here.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Here.
Mr. Villardo?
Here. Would you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And it probably goes without saying, but I will mention anyway that on September 11th, today, that perhaps, I hope, perhaps, that Pledge of Allegiance might carry just a little more meaning to you and your heart and lives today. And we certainly are with those who are in also harm's way down in South and have struggled through a couple of hurricanes. So our thoughts and our prayers are with them as well. Moving on to Agenda Item 3, District Highlights and Recognitions. This is the fun stuff that we get to do. We get to celebrate some of the, and I emphasize some because we have incredible students, I would suggest to you, students throughout this district that do some really wonderful things, and I wish we could recognize all of them all the time. But tonight, we get to recognize those who are part of the VFW Buckeye Boys and Girls State. That's our first recognition. I am going to go to the podium to kind of introduce this, and I will ask the Board of Education to, with Dr. Kellogg, to please line up in front for our recognition. This again is one of those things that I can assure you that my fellow board members, Dr. Kellogg and Mr. Griffith, are just truly honored to do. So in recognition of the Buckeye Boys and Girls State delegates, I would like to call up Dr. Glenn Golden from the VFW to introduce last year's Buckeye Boys and Girls State delegates. Please come forward, sir. Why don't you welcome him to the podium?
Well, the first thing I have to correct is that it's actually American Legion. I am a member of both. I'm a life member of the VFW too. So. But so I'll just give you a brief introduction. We'll do the Buckeye Boys State and Buckeye Girls State. The boys will go first. That's the way it was set up. So. The Americanism, well, thank you for, first off, for inviting us this evening. That's wonderful that you take the time out for us like that. The Americanism in Government Test Program of the Ohio American Legion is open to all students in grades 10th, 11th, and 12th. The test is comprised of 50 questions and a 300-word essay. The questions and essay cover historical events and other pertinent information such as the United States flag, the Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution, and state, county, and city, township, village, and the school district governments in Ohio. Okay, that has to do with the Americanism in government testing. The Buckeye Boys State and Buckeye Girls State share many of the same goals and infrastructure. The Boys State is sponsored by the American Legion. Girls State is sponsored by the American Legion Auxiliary. Boys must commit to 8 days on the campus of a major university, while Girls State requires girls to commit a 7-day commitment at another university campus. Both programs involve a mythical state that is set up, and as well as towns, counties, local governments, in which the delegates will be citizens there. And what they have to do is they have to go through the whole process of getting elected. In other words, they campaign, they do all these things, so they're really learning in depth about what it takes to run a state, a county, or municipal government, whatever, any kind of an organization such as that, and they fulfill a role. After that first day, whenever they're elected or appointed or whatever, they fulfill a role. And I did give your secretary there a list of the roles that they have completed. The goals of this program is to develop leadership and pride in American citizens, to educate delegates about our system of government, to instill in delegates a greater understanding of American traditions, and to stimulate the desire to maintain our government process. Attendance also makes participants eligible to apply for or be selected for awards, honors, and scholarships. So there's a big payoff for a lot of these. I know that we had at least one that did get a scholarship. Anyway, I'll start out with Westerville North. The 2017 Buckeye Boys State delegates are Andrew Scherer. Okay, I'm going about this different. I'm going about differently. I think I started out with the wrong school first, so that'll mess things up for you. Let me go back and start out with Central High School, because that's the way she has it on here. Jason Brown, Benjamin Clark, Nate Forrest, Noah Martin, and then North High School had Richard Dew, Austin Ebrecht, Connor Height, Trent McFarland, Brandon Messmer, Ellen Rolfe, Andrew Scherer, South High School, Dominic Boyd, Tan Pham, and Aiden Thompson. Did I miss anybody? Okay, now we'll go to the Girls State delegates. Maddie Carson from Central High, Ariana Kellum, and Brianna Them. North High School is Sydney Broyles, Gabrielle Cochran, Riley Cochran, Whitney Damson, Claire Dawson, Emily Gurry, Amanda Lamb, From South High School, Caitlin Grella. Emily Harper. Grace Yingling. Okay. So the American Legion's Americanism in Government test winners are Cooper Garrett was Central High School local winner. Jordan Neese, North High School local winner. Trent McFarland, North High School local winner. And you saw him up here before. And Morgan Perryman, North High School local and district winner. She graduated. So the seniors in there graduated. Shay Taria Sparks from Central High School, a local winner. John Whitesmith, North High School local and district winner. He's also graduated. So anyway, I would like to also I noticed that we have some of our people here that were the advisors, student advisors. They've done one heck of a job. We've got Mr. Don Ogle, who is working in conjunction with Katie Mahoney there. And at North High School, we have Mr. James Brady. And Mr. Tim Smith was, I don't believe he's here, but he's at South High School. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Offer one more round of applause for the graduate, the honorees, and just thanking this man for all the work that he's doing. When I came in, I said, thank you for being here and so on. And this is what he said. He said, no, this district has some outstanding students, and it is really an honor to work with them. I want you to hear that. And I would add to the parents, thank you for the support that you have given these young men and young women.
Absolutely.
This is not an inconsequential honor that they are receiving tonight. And I would like to say on behalf of the board as well, thank you to the staff, the teachers, and the administration that is doing some outstanding work with these young men and women. So one more time, applaud for everybody.
Thank you very much.
I believe all the honorees and parents and all that, you are welcome to leave. Unless you want to stay for the meeting, you are welcome to leave. I think we're going to take some photographs out in the hallway or out in the lobby.
I know, we know.
Oh, that's real nice. It's an honor. You gave me the wrong one.
Oh, dear.
Can you thumb through? Thank you.
Who would you like to be? Probably towards the middle.
Did you get a pen though?
No. Take your pen.
Goodness, we slided you all the way.
Wow, we really messed up
Oh,
on you.
wow.
We couldn't find them at the beginning.
Just remember, these are elected officials. We're the ones who had to vote.
But the superintendent was also involved.
It'll be the last one.
President Velardo, if I can real quick, I think it's always important to.
absolutely.
Yeah, not just be thankful for a district and families and communities that support this, but I always like to call out, I'm actually a member of Post 171. Been a second vice commander there for quite a while, I guess, and I was also at one time assistant chair for Boys State and Girls State selection. So the process is lengthy. The Post and the auxiliary do all of the work. They bring in members of the community to do interviews, and I think that the most important thing to call attention to is that this American Legion Post in our town of Westerville has sent more students to Boys State and Girls State than any other post in the state since the creation of the program. So literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of our students have had an opportunity to participate in Boys State and Girls State because of this very vibrant, very active American Legion Post that we have here in Westerville. And great teachers and advisors. I've actually done Boys State, Girls State stuff with Don Ogle since about 10 years ago. So the passion that our teachers and our advisors and our staff and support do as well needs to be called out. So.
Thank you.
I want to say something before we go on, too. It's worth mentioning, again, as you were talking about earlier, Rick, how much this district believes in the study of American history and truly making sure our students understand the role of government in our society. It is a long-held tenet of our culture here. And I am so pleased that we continue to support that and that we continue to send our young people out into the world with a good understanding of what it means to be American and what it means to be American at this place and time. So I want to thank all of our educators and all of our families, and of course all of our students, and of course the American Legion, for making sure that we do the best that we can do to help bring forward each generation successively to stand strong on what it means to be an American.
Thank you. Yes, sure.
I just wanted to say that, first of all, thank all the staff for helping students prepare for this great experience. I've actually had the opportunity to serve as an advisor to students at Girls State, advising them as far as how a state agency would develop legislation and bring that toward the legislature. Sorry about that. Anyway, it is such an amazing experience and opportunity for students. The American Legion does a wonderful job organizing it. It's not just elected officials at the state, county, and local level, including townships and cities and school districts, but they also have the opportunity to serve as public servants as well. And it's just an amazing experience for the students to see government operating on all those different levels and how those different entities, function within each other and working together. I think it's really a great opportunity for them to really understand our government much better. So thank you to the American Legion and our staff.
Thank you very much. Very important. Agenda item 4.01, approval of the minutes from regular Board of Education meeting held on Monday, August 27. What we do is we ask if there are any corrections, any additions, deletions, and hearing none, they are approved. Moving on to agenda item 5.01, summer school report. I believe Dr. Ebrecht will be bringing this report to us.
Yes, President Velardo, members of the board, thank you for inviting me here tonight. It's actually a family event because my son was just recognized at the Boys State, and my own parents decided to come support him, and then they're staying for this presentation. So thank you for providing the entertainment for my parents this evening. Okay.
Take them to dinner afterwards.
They're senior citizens. They eat earlier.
Well, maybe they want dessert.
Oh, that's a good one. Sorry, Mom and Dad. Okay. So anyway. All right, shall we continue here? My mom and dad, they got me in trouble already, didn't they? Yes. All right, here we go. So I want to talk about summer learning. You'll recall last spring when I was here, we were talking about what the summer program was going to look like, all the components to it, and I feel tremendously honored to come tonight and share with you all the positives that occurred this summer. And you'll recall that The Summer Learning Opportunities is made up of our OGT, OST testing. We provide credit recovery course advancement to our high school students. We provide middle school summer intervention to our grades 6 through 8 students. We provide summer splash. We've kind of gone more towards a coding kind of workshop. We kind of alternate with that in terms of the different opportunities for kids. The intervention program runs K-3 as well as 4-5, and then our almost kindergarten program continues on, affording kids who have never had any school experience an opportunity to come in, see what school's like for a week. So we offer that as well. And I'm going to give you stats. You'll recall perhaps last spring when I gave you what the metrics were going to be on how we would measure success. We don't shy away from data, so we're going to show you what the metrics ended up being, okay? And we'll celebrate that. At least I hope you will with me. So we believe in a one-to-one initiative during the summer because we have the technology to do that. And so we have students have their own Chromebook. We do use a blended approach with our students, particularly at the high school level, using digital content to help allow kids to work at their own pace. And those kids that are highly motivated can get through the curriculum and move on with their summer vacation. So you'll see there the Apex curriculum. We also use Star Reading and Math now, and then we also use Lexia for reading as well. So I want to talk a little bit about 2 community partnerships. Actually, I'm going to turn the mic over to Greg Mantanigues, who will share a little bit. Greg was our administrator in grades 4 through 8, and I wanted him to showcase a little bit about our partnerships. So come on up here, Greg. Again, Greg was at our General Middle School 4 through 8, so
Yep.
have at it.
It was a great honor to be principal of the 4 through 8 program, and I want to talk a little bit about the community partnerships as well as, while we did some tangible things, some of the intangible results that we saw. As Dr. E is going to show you some of the data and some of the academic growth, I want to talk about these programs and how they developed some character and really helped with some socio-emotional growth that was more just witnessed and seen by the teachers and by myself. The first partnership was through Westerville Kiwanis. They donated over 1,000 books. It was so great. In the 4 through 8 program, they actually donated so many that we were able to have kids walk through twice and choose books. This was not just a kind of passive process. The teachers really helped them select, and we had some good book discussions. And it is just different watching a student that knows this is my book versus I have to bring this book back, I have to return this book. And so, that along with, I know they're doing the birthday book program now with Westerville City Schools, and so just a huge thanks to Kiwanis and the amazing opportunities they've afforded our students. And then the Westerville Public Library came in, and they basically did a robotics coding program with us, and again, they worked with our 3rd graders and our 4th graders, and just watching these students kind of go in and just light up when they realized, oh, I get to control the way this robot moves, and really kind of seeing the kind of bright lights go off in their eyes and kind of having them ask really good questions of both the programmers and the teachers and of each other. I really feel as though we're developing some other things. Another technology thing that we were able to do this year is make use of our Fab Labs. Bill Wetta, who runs them over at, runs the engineering design program at Walnut, we had him on staff, and so that afforded us the opportunity to use those during the summer. And then just one thing that really isn't maybe quantifiable is just having a committed staff and teachers that really believe in what they were doing and working hard on the academics, but more the conversations I saw in those small moments. We had smaller classroom sizes and really some of the connections that were made, and some of the students, especially kind of at the middle school level, that maybe already started thinking that, hey, maybe school's not the place for me. I felt like they could go into this year and really have the idea that, no, I'm ready, I can give this another shot, I can come after it, and that's really a credit to the teachers who were working within the program. It was really heartwarming to see, and I think we're going to see a difference in the data as well, but if not, definitely in the attitude that those students brought towards school. So,
Thanks, Greg.
Yep.
So for our high school students, again, that's for students grades 9 and above. We did choose this year, the Board of Education supported that move for us to move to we used to charge $400 for credit recovery and credit advancement. And we wanted to make sure we were affording kids the opportunity, if they chose to recover credit, to do so in the summer at a cost of $100 a credit. And you'll see in our numbers, we were able to attain that. So in the past, in 2016, we had 216 students. We jumped up to 308. So we almost added another 100 students by making that move. You see there, our credit advancement stayed around 100. Previous year it was 140, this year was 141. So that stayed the same. But again, where did we want to see our growth? It was credit recovery. And you'll see that we jumped from 76 students to 167, taking that opportunity. And so what we know is when students get behind, when they're undercredited, they don't move on, for example, to senior status. There's many things that occur. And we were able to recover the credit, and more students were able to attain, and now they're more on track to graduate on time. And that's what we wanted to see, and we were successful in. You'll see we had 258 students out of 308 actually earn the credit. And you say, 84%, how about the other 16? Well, we always focus on the 84. And yes, we're concerned about the 16%. And some of those kids are still they're finishing up some of the things. But at the same time, to have a program in the summer that students choose to come to recover credit, 84% ended up making that mark and have moved on in their credit attainment. So for enrollment, this is always an interesting statistic there. And I think the board can see the year that we implemented the PE waiver. You'll see, what happened to us with our summer enrollment. Now, cost savings, think about that from a cost savings standpoint. Many parents felt that they needed to have their kid take the PE in the summer at a cost of $400. Well, when we did the PE waiver, of course, those kids were able to then take other elective courses. And you'll see there that while we've decreased tremendously, I think we'll always stay around 75 to 80 students in that, okay? You see mathematically as well, the huge jump, for example, in Algebra 2. Over the years, just this last year, we went from having 22 students last year to 61 this summer take Algebra 2. Okay? So you can see the jump in the number of students, particularly in mathematics there. So in the middle school intervention program, Greg was just highlighting there, we had 85 students participate. Now, when you look at growth, you think, during a 4-week period, that's 1 month. So it's not uncommon to see 1 month of growth. That's what you would hope to see at least when we're measuring students. So during 4 weeks, our students saw 6 months worth of growth in reading, and then 9 months worth of growth in mathematics using the assessment STAR is what we utilize for that. So I just want to acknowledge that. And then also for our elementary students, if we continue on here, we had 413 students participating in our 4-week program. Because we do so much outreach and we continue to connect with our parents that we had some parents that chose not to sign up for the 4-week program, but yet their student was going to be retained in 3rd grade. And we knew we needed to get to them. So we were relentless. We kept coming back at the family. What can we do to serve you? What can we do to support you, your child? And what we ended up doing was doing Barb Wallace, I appreciated her leadership on this. We ended up doing a 2-week boot camp with those kids to try to get them over the edge. The family couldn't commit to 4 weeks, but they could 2, and that's what we ended up doing with them. So we were trying to do everything we could so these students could move on to grade 4. And you'll see in reading our percentile growth. So when you think of percentiles, I always use the illustration out of 100 kids. Okay, if you were to line up 100 kids in kindergarten, for example, when they started kindergarten, these students would be 19th in line, with 100 being the best reader possible. What's cool is our kids moved from 19th in line to 40th in line, if you want to consider with that illustration. And the same thing with grade 1. We went from 24th in line to 45th, which if you think about average is usually between 40 and 60. So you can see just in 4 weeks what smaller learning environments can do, coupled with phenomenal teachers that are the best teachers with tremendous administrators too, and community partnerships. So, and throwing a pretty good director in there a little bit, okay? All right, so grades 2 through 3, average 3.5 month worth of growth. So again, we're overcoming that, not just 1 month of growth, it's 3.5 months worth of growth. Grades 4 through 5, we had a 5-month growth period. You also see in grade 3 passage rate. Now, the state of Ohio, as we know, continues to raise the bar for passage. And you may have seen that this summer. There were many school districts really struggling. I know one particular district, 42% of their kids at the end of the year were going to be retained. Okay? In our school district, we knew that we wanted to make sure that we provided every opportunity, and we ended up getting our final estimated passage rate to 99%, if you round to 99, and I will, okay? But it's 98.6, all right? So I think that, again, shows that we've been consistent. Even though the state raised the bar 13% on the passage rate, we were still able to be up where we, granted, we want every kid to move on. But I think we're highly successful in our program there. So in other elementary, just kind of zeroing in on the 3rd grade reading guarantee. For those of you that do not know, the 3rd grade reading guarantee, in order for students to move on to 4th grade, they have to pass an assessment. And they have to show competency. They have to show proficiency. And you'll see that we ended up having 23 of 38, 38 being the most at-risk kids in terms of readers as identified by the state of Ohio on the Ohio State test. And we ended up, again, with that 98.6% passage rate. And in mathematics, you can see, too, we showed 14% growth K3 and 12% grade 4-5. Almost kindergarten, you take these kiddos, and to be honest with you, they're parents, okay? And we grow them. And I'm pleased to say during this readiness camp that we had 12 students participate. We had a full class there. We could have taken a few more. We get out, we try to publicize it, and we had 12 students, which was still a very nice class for kindergartners. And we have a tremendous teacher with that, and it certainly eased the transition for kindergarten. Looking ahead, so for 2018, we are going to continue to stay focused on our student identification and eligibility. We need to always be cognizant of our tuition fees, our staffing, always recruiting the best teachers in for summer. We'll continue to identify curriculum opportunities that we can grow our kids in. And certainly, from a scheduling standpoint, making sure that instructional time is indeed that, focused on instruction and growing kids like you saw in our data. So that's kind of what I wanted to share with you. This presentation was all based on the metrics I spoke about last spring that I wanted to come back. And you know what? If it was negative, I was going to share it. But it was all positive, I think. So, but that's a tribute, to, I think, to our wonderful teachers that are in the trenches every day working with our kids, even in the summer. So with that, Board, I'll open it up to any questions or clarification.
Thank you very much. Who would like to begin with questions or comments?
I have 2 or 3. First of all, as you were talking about the relentlessness with which we went after families to really try to meet their needs, one, I really appreciate that you chose to continue to do that, that you really worked with those families to find something that would meet their needs. But as you think about our at-risk students who do not enroll in summer school, whatever the grade level may be or whatever the course may be, as you look at your data and as you think about your conversations, what are some of the main reasons that they choose not to enroll, the at-risk students?
Well, at one time, it was due to the fact that we didn't offer, for example, transportation in grades 4 through 8. 6 through 8.
Yeah.
We took that off the table 3 years ago. The board chose to help fund that. And so I fall back to that because that was a huge barrier, and I would support that 100%. But now we transport grades K through 12. At one time, it was because not all their siblings, like for example, in kindergarten, couldn't attend. We added kindergarten. But it comes down to for example, parental involvement, certainly, and also from a standpoint of we offer a morning program, okay? And many times, as we know, working families need to go into the afternoon with that. So while it's not necessarily a barrier, that could be a logical reason why. And it's hard to be everything to everybody, okay? And I always come back to the fact that resources are finite. And yeah, in the wonderful world of everything, we might offer a full-day program, but that isn't what we do or can do. So we go above and beyond what most districts do And what's interesting is I always get telephone calls from outside of our district when they hear about our program because their school districts aren't offering a summer program. So I think we're making some great headway. And also, I think from an elementary standpoint, we did have a cap this year in terms of the number of students, and that's something that we can continue to look at and perhaps raise that cap a little bit more so that we can continue to offer programming to those kids that want to come.
Thank you. That's a good, thorough answer. The percentile growth, the credits that were gained, the reading levels that were gained, fantastic data. When I think about how hard it is to move the needle, that needle just went zooming along for a lot of our kids, and that's great. Congratulations, everyone that was involved in that. As you think about that, are there any components that, if you had your magic wand to wave, that you would like to see replicated during the regular school year to allow significant growth beyond what we already have?
What's cool about our summer program is we are a laboratory for testing what we think could work and then see if it does work. And so I'm pleased to say that most everything that we do in summer learning and that we learn actually is then adopted into the regular school year. So my magic wand is to continue to allow us the ability to vet what we think are high-quality instructional practices, do it with the best teachers, right? All of our teachers are great, but we're talking teachers that have taught for like 25 years, okay, and have seen things come and go. So to continue to allow us to do that, vet those learning opportunities or those instructional practices that then we can carry on throughout the school year. So just a continuation of what we're already doing with that. And I think when you look back, for example, Lexia, Dreambox, 10 Marks, even Apex, were all instructional practices that we honed our skills on in the summer, and then those people then were able to go back out into the schools and replicate.
That's a great model. And the last thing, I told you I had two or three, this is the third. As you look at the positive data and the credits that were gained in particular, were there any particular areas where we had lower levels of credits gained? For instance, I'm thinking about mathematics. How are we looking specifically in mathematics? And I'm thinking about algebra and algebra 2.
Thank you for asking that question. Because actually, over the past several years, we've really tried to hone in on that and do better. So for example, in Algebra 2, 3 years ago, we were at a passage rate of 58%. And we looked in the mirror and said, that's not good enough. What are we going to do differently? And so we truly honed in again on our instructional practices, our methodology. We made sure that we broke things down even more for Algebra 2 students. And so 2 years ago, we went from 58 to 91% passage rate in that Algebra 2 class. And this year, we ended up at 85%. So we've stayed the course of at a significantly high percentage. Because if you think about it, many of the kids that took Algebra 2 failed it the first time. And I'm not trying to say they failed it a second time. Some did, but there's many reasons for that. One is engagement. When you look at and you drill down into the data, what's great about digital content is you can see engagement. Like in a typical classroom, you can't always see engagement in a classroom, okay? You can, but my point is you can't look into a student's mind and see what they're thinking, okay? But when you're in a digital environment, you can see the level of engagement due to the clicks of the mouse and things like that. And unfortunately, the data shows that the 15% that didn't pass, they didn't have the engagement. And so that is what you have to constantly overcome. And that's through those relationships, and Mr. Manthaniques was talking about that. When you're working in the summer, you can increase those relationships. You can build those because you're in a smaller environment, more intimate environment to do that. So
That's great, Scott. Thank you for this information. It's very helpful. And the last thing, John, I really like what we're doing with summer school. Many people, when they think about summer school, they think of it as kind of backward looking. These are children sometimes who needed extra help. credits needed to be gained, and so forth. But if you think about the model that we've implemented and what we've moved to over the last few years, this is a model that addresses the needs of the students, but does so in a way that looks forward to what we can actually do so that those students, one, continue to thrive, but also the lessons that we learn can be applied throughout the district. That's really good stuff.
We also, thank you, Dr. Nancy Nestor-Baker, but you know what else we do? We also make sure we share the data coming out of summer with the teachers that they're going to, so that there is that lag, there's no lag. They just move on, so.
Thank you.
I want to take just a second here. I love data. We all know this, and when you put data in front of me, I'm gonna dig into it. There's an interesting phenomenon here that not so much questions to be answered, but thoughts to consider going into next year.
Sure.
So we look at a pipeline here of elementary students, 413. We come out the other end into summer participation in the high school grades, and we're in the 241. We had the middle schools, and we're at 85. So we see this big cohort in the elementary grades. We see this substantial percentile reduction in the middle school and then high school. I think as I look at the information just as it's presented, it's because, certainly a contributor is that we see an intervention based off of a lot of heavy bias towards test scores, which is probably appropriate in the elementary school grades. We see intervention based upon recommendation or referral in the middle school grades. And we see a dual track of intervention and advancement in high school. So when I think about where we're all in agreement that our attention needs to swing heavily towards our middle school grades, things like introducing the concept of advancement through potential pre-algebra courses for our middle schoolers, right? Or advanced English composition courses, or providing both advanced and intervention opportunities for those middle schoolers, I think would be a better transition and yield better numbers for participation from students that need both the opportunities for more as well as those that need the opportunity for help. So, just kind of what the numbers suggest to me, but I'd like to see what we could do creatively around middle school.
Thank you. I think middle school is certainly an opportunity, and I know Greg and I have talked about that in our summer project team that we discussed that, and looking how we can engage students, to your point, how can we engage them where they want to come, they want to be there, and it's a benefit to them, huge. So yes, thank you.
So I'm going to follow along the same lines as Richard. I was looking at the increased enrollment in high school, but then as you scroll down, where did it go for middle and elementary school?
So elementary represented, middle school stayed about the same.
Okay.
We typically around have 90 students in middle school. And again, that goes back to we need to continue to look for ways, what Richard said, to attract kids into a program that typically middle schoolers can stay at home by themselves.
Right.
Okay? Elementary kids, they really, let's go and get in this program, right? High school students have skin in the game because they want to get credits. So in middle school, it's that kind of period where we got to figure that out and to attract them, and that's where we started going with the technology pieces, the Fab Lab, those kind of opportunities. And we'll certainly take Mr. Bird's advice under recommendations as well. So, but in the elementary division, sometimes you have to reduce things in order to gain things. And certainly in the elementary division, we lowered the cap on that, and we made it first come, first serve for students. So there were some students that they registered later in the game and were not a part of our summer programming so that we could stay within our budget. So yes, that's where we saw a little bit of a decrease. Then typically we have around 470 students, elementary students. But again, I go back to that whole finite resource piece, and we know that what our budget was, and we stayed there.
So we would have had more students in elementary school.
We could have.
it's an open secret that we are pretty passionate about raising our level of strength in our middle schools. That's an open secret. And it's so much of an open secret that we know Dr. Reeves is forming a team and community and emphasis of,
You just made him a doctor.
you don't have that yet?
You just gave him an honorary.
All you need to do is pay money, you get a doctorate. It's not that big of a deal.
Oh,
Hey.
is that the same way with a divinity degree?
Oh, my God.
There you have to
Sorry,
pay.
I couldn't resist it.
There you have to pay and pray. So that's an open secret. We know that. And I really appreciate all the comments about the middle school piece. Yes,
Nope, keep going, and then I'll fill in.
go ahead.
I'm thinking about that middle school piece and thinking about the elementary piece, and I'm just wondering if maybe going forward, we didn't cap that, how that would impact our middle schoolers, just letting them come, get a taste of it, that this is positive. You know, we talked about all the input from the community. You know, we could kind of sell that if kiddos do need that going forward. I wish we would not cap the elementary school kids. So just want to throw my thoughts out.
You feel like not,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going to jump in on that one as well. Part of a warm-up for next year, I definitely would like to see some economic modeling on what that would look like, because in two parts. The first is not so much the cost of the district, simply because we know that there are natural barriers to taking the district up on this offer, right? We know families, it's not going to be a flood, right? But we do know that from a student outcomes standpoint, that if we doubled those numbers, as a for instance, and those yielded better overall graduation rates and other academic outcomes, it's a worthwhile investment from a district standpoint. That being said, I think we also need to take into consideration that we need to make sure that we've got the available resources from a staffing standpoint, and available qualified teachers to be able to manage those programs as well as that expansion. But I'm in agreement. I would like to see what an economic model would look like for a cap-off approach relative to our summer opportunities.
That's not hard for us to put together. In fact, we kind of already have that. So Scott and I have worked on this for several years to balance the books versus the outcomes. And I think what you're seeing tonight is the aftermath of that, because he pushed back on us to lower tuition rate to increase enrollment, right, supply and demand, in order to meet more student needs. But there's a bottom line number that I'm working with him that we want to use. So, you know, the simple numbers is X number of kids paying X amount of dollars covers X amount of teacher salary and transportation and all the other parts that go with it. And, you know, we can plug those numbers in. What I appreciated about Scott's presentation tonight, from a numbers perspective, is given the investment we made, we pushed our third grade reading guarantee numbers up to, we're going to call it 99%, for the third year in a row, even though the state moved the bar for passage rate up again. So that's phenomenal work amongst his team and the rest of Barb Wallace and all the elementary people's team. We pushed our graduation rate to an all-time high because we picked up, how many summer grads?
I think there were 9.
Nine summer grads, so that helped
Which
us.
represents a percent.
Right, so we pushed our graduation rate up because of that work. We had more students taking credits. The middle school problem is not unique to Westerville. No matter how I've seen it sliced as a mandate for underperformance during the year, and as a attraction for a great program, it just always seems to lack attraction. But doesn't mean we can't give it a go, and I think some of the work that we did this year that Greg was describing puts the word of mouth on the street about what the opportunities were. So we capitalized on things we have that we know our students are excited about, right? We know our middle school kids in general have gotten excited about using the Fab Lab. So that was a great lure that we can capitalize on moving forward. We also have a facility at the shop. So there are ways to do that, that we can continue that. But on the other side of that, we want to get gain out of it in terms of the academic skill sets the kids have and the academic outcomes, and not just make it camp, it's got to be camp with, oh, I didn't know I learned that underneath it. So we can continue to do that. I think the other question is, and this is a budget question as we get down the line, let's look at the numbers and see what the board, when working with Mr. Griffith and myself, what are we willing to invest in the summer school? Because frankly, and Scott's heard me say it, you'd be hard-pressed to find, I'll say it, you'd be hard-pressed to find a larger summer school program, I know, in Franklin County. And I think you'd be challenged to find a more robust one across the state. Reaching down from kindergarten through high school, and the numbers of kids we bring in, and providing transportation and the community partnerships, it's a very robust summer school program that I'm proud of from a comparability standpoint, but we just want to be on the same page of what do we want to invest in it and what are the outcomes. Now that we have metrics that we want to measure, and Greg mentioned some others, he hit on it with the belonging part. That went underneath maybe someone's, but I caught that one, which was reattaching, I'll call it reattaching kids to feeling like they belong at school so that when they walk back in the door, and then Scott mentioned moving the data forward, how do we capture those relationships that would get started in the summer with those kids who say, ooh, feeling a little bit better about school than I was at the end of my whatever grade level was. These guys got me excited again. How do we now attach that back, that feeling back into the regular year when they come in so it doesn't get stifled right from day one when something happens where they lose all that momentum? So great opportunity in there for us to capitalize on and get the outcome. Because people talk about year-round schooling. This is year-round schooling for a percentage of our kids. And in fact, how many total kids did we serve in summer school? Top of your
I
head?
never added it all up, roughly 1,000 students.
So we'll call it 1/15 of our population is year-round school. And the credit recovery piece is an interesting phenomenon because it has an impact on high school master schedules. Because every student who failed a course during the year that they needed for graduation, who doesn't go to summer school, re-enrolls in that course during the regular school year. And so the percentage that are coming to summer school, that Scott was able to pick up more coming in. So we had more coming to summer school, which reduced the number of kids re-enrolling in the course during the regular year, which eats up seats in FTE. So if you have a high failure rate in a course, Algebra 1, and those kids don't come to summer school, that percentage of kids is re-enrolling the next year and artificially pushing your FTE up for that course because you have repeaters in there.
And coupled by the fact they then sign up for Algebra 1 and like geometry. So now you have a kiddo sometimes taking 2 maths that necessarily struggle in math. That's not a good model either.
Yeah.
So yes.
So it's a two-pronged approach. What do we do to be better during the regular year, first round, so we have fewer failures? And then when we need summer school, how can we patch that together that has, so there's a trade-off between the summer school investment versus FTE investment during the school year. And Scott Reeves and I have looked at those numbers a couple different times. So what is our FTE investment relative to kids who are repeating courses that they failed the year before? Because every time you do it wrong, you have to do it over again, it costs you money. So kudos to Scott, his team, Greg, and the work he did, all the staff who did that work. We benefited from this, and we want to continue looking at the program.
So I think one of the things you're hearing is we're really pleased with the robustness of what we have already. And I think what you're hearing is we really are passionate about increasing the opportunities, particularly at elementary school. But I think Mrs. Davidson is correct that if we can remove some caps, if we can figure that out, if we can at least look at those economic models, that would be tremendous. I would posit that Mr. Reeves do a doctoral dissertation on
Summer school learning?
on summer school learning in middle school. I will just conclude this section by noting, I hope my board members, fellow board members, that Dr. Ebrecht said that when you do online learning, the more engaged you are, the more clicks and time online has something to do with the success rate.
Yes.
I just
You talking about
think
ECOT?
that, I would not mention any, I'm just saying that I think that that's.
ECOT.
Very good. Always good to come to the board and walk away with more work because the work is good.
Thank
So and I do mean that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming.
you.
Thank you.
Nancy.
Thank you for your
We move on to public comments, 6.01. We have no one signed up this evening. Moving on to our Financial Audit Committee, 7.01. This is just a notice at this time. Is that correct, Mr. Griffith?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, this is just another notice that we have 4 days left that we're taking applications for those who want to be on the audit committee. We have 10 people who have submitted resumes so far. We'll see how many we get the rest of the week. So it's still open. You can still send in and send us an email. Click on the tab on the website. It comes right to us. That's for the audit committee. Just a couple of other informational. I gave in your packet, actually it's I put on the board, I didn't print it for you, but for 2016, this district received the Ohio Auditor State Award with distinction again. Makes year number 5 for us. We were going to try to have my staff come to a meeting, we just never could work it out. But again, this district, I will say that this goes to Laura Hendricks and her staff. They do a great job. And I've always said, anybody who touches the financial process of this district, whether it's be purchase orders, receiving money, is part of this award because everybody has to do their part to receive this.
Absolutely.
So it's an audit thing. It's very nice that we receive that. The last thing I was going to mention is some of you might have known, and I gave you copies of a presentation that we gave. Moody's does what they call a surveillance every couple years. And this was a presentation that Dave Conley and I, mainly he put together, but we go through and we did a conference call. Mark Hirschheiser was in the room with us. We did a conference call basically selling not just Westerville City Schools, but Westerville community. This is when you get an upgrade from a AA2 to a AA1, that's not just the schools, that's the community as well. Because and I gave you this presentation so you can see that. It looks at levy history, it looks at valuation, it looks at debt, community debt with bond debt issues, looks at the 5-year forecast. There's a lot of things in here that are community related. And so for us, I gave you a copy of the presentation that we did a phone conference with Moody's. I also gave you their final report if you wanted to read that. It's a lot of legalese, but basically just says we went to a AA1. We actually tried to push for a AAA, believe it or not. There are only 4 school districts in the state of Ohio that have a AAA. We were a legitimate contender for this one. There was a couple things that we didn't have. One of them was a little more history. They wanted to see where you are in a couple years. So legitimately, if we could maintain this for a couple more years and go back to them, you have a shot at a AAA. There's only 4 schools in Ohio. There's only 20, counting us, that have a AA1. So I gave you the list if you want to see what company we keep in there. It's pretty neat to be that. And I asked them to quantify. I said, okay, so we get an extra AA2 to AA1. So what's that worth for us? Besides the rating for bonds, it's like your own credit score. You get a better interest rate if you ever go out to borrow money. And I asked him to quantify that. And he said, basically, it's worth $31,000. If you were to borrow $1 million for 30 years, it's worth $31,000 in net present value. So if the district were to borrow, more than that, $50 million, it's worth $1.5 million. So it can be, and it is substantial. And it's a good rating to have for a school district like ours. And again, this is not just the school district, but again, it takes a community because they look at the median income, the average home values. They look at a lot of things. And you're basically, when we were doing this, we were selling Westerville, not just Westerville schools, but we're selling Westerville. And so it's a pretty big deal to have these. So I just wanted to share that with you. You can see the list of the company we keep on the last page, which is pretty nice company. So the next thing would be probably Standard & Poor's next year. We got an upgrade from them back in December of 15, so that would be the next one we would do. They kind of come back every 2 years, but we push for a AAA, and usually they won't jump you 2 spots. That was the other thing kind of against us. They'll jump you 1, but it's very difficult to go 2 spots, and that's what they would have had to do. So anyway, just wanted to share that with you, just as an update.
Thank you very much. Any comments?
Yeah, Rick, just real quick.
Absolutely.
I think it's worth noting for the community that that puts us in the 96th percentile of 600 and some odd school districts in the state. To be, at the 20th mark is no small feat. nicely done. And Moody's, I think it's important, I think we said this, the last bond rating upgrade that we had. Regardless of perceptions relative to managing a complicated and large school district as it relates to financials, you don't get your credit upgraded off of perceptions. You get your credit upgraded off of good business practices, fiscal discipline, being smart, being wise, right? So when I see credit ratings increases relative to the performance of the district on a fiscal basis, I think that is the strongest message that we could be sending to the community, that this district, the administration, the teachers, the board, are managing this enterprise at a very high level relative to, like I said, 20-some-odd other school districts, and we pushed to get into the top 5. So nicely done.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, I would just like to say, great job, Bart, and of course, I'd like to thank also your staff and everyone else at the district that was involved in helping to get the good audit results, as well as this increased, rating in our Moody's rating. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Moving on to Agenda Item 8, Personnel Consent Agenda. I'd like a motion and a second as Ms. Lori Lofton comes to the podium.
So moved.
Second.
Please.
Good evening, President Velardo, members of the board. Tonight's consent agenda contains 9 sections involving 269 persons. Section 8.01 is the resignation of 1 classified administrator. Amber Koski is going to be leaving our food service department for another opportunity, and we want to wish her well and thank her for her service. We have the resignation of 11 classified staff and 5 substitutes. 8.02 is the resignation of 1 outside supplemental contract holder for marching band technician. 8.03 is an amended leave of absence date for 1 teacher. 8.04 is a temporary change of assignment for 7 classified employees. 8.05 is a contractual status change for 7 classified employees. 8.06 is a contractual status change for 2 teachers. 8.07 is a variety of one-time payments for teachers. Most of these are additional names added to previously approved items. 8.08 is the employment of 16 classified employees, 1 substitute administrator, 16 substitutes, and 1 correction. And 8.09 is a very wide variety of supplemental contracts, including in-district and outside supplementals. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Any questions or comments before we vote?
Just real quick, I'm not sure if we've talked about the method to flag these, but in the cases where we have previously approved on a project and a not-to-exceed basis, is there a method in any cases where we do exceed the project total that we bring that back to the board?
President Velardo, Mr. Byrd, what we do is ask when someone submits additional names, we ask them to double check that they are not exceeding the amount that was already board approved. And if it does exceed that, we change that amount as well and ask for it to be reapproved as an additional amount.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you much. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Griffith, please call the roll.
Ms. Cotter,
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Byrd,
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Velardo.
Yes, thank you very much. Agenda item 9, agenda item 9, recommended action, old business. We have none this evening. Agenda item 10, recommended action, new business. We have none this evening. Agenda item 11, recommended action, standing business. 11.01, middle school CTE waiver. Now, we need a motion and a second for this, correct? Motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second?
Thank you much. Anyone to speak to this, Dr. Kellogg? Mr. Reeves?
I believe the former Dr. Reeves, now Mr. Reeves, will bring us.
I tried to help you, man.
When I become one, I'm going to wear a stethoscope and a white lab coat, just so there's no mistake. President Velardo, Dr. Kellogg, and members of the board, there should be resolution language that you have that the board is required to do annually for any grade level at the middle level, 7th or 8th, where we do not offer state-approved career technical coursework. We do in the 7th grade with our engineering course, and we don't currently have state-approved career technical coursework at the 8th grade level, so thus the resolution.
Thank you for clarifying that. Any questions or comments for Mr. Reeves? Mr. Griffith, please call the roll.
Ms. Cotter?
Yes.
Mr. Byrd?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo?
Yes. Agenda item 11.02, a renewal policy 2413 for career advising. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. Mr. Reeves?
Yes, as required by state law, we are, as a district, policy 2413, our career advising policy, we must renew this policy every 2 years. The policy is fine as written. I do not recommend any changes to the wording. We have implemented many strategies that are outlined within that policy and continue to do that at our secondary and elementary level. So this is just a straightforward required renewal. Same language, no changes recommended.
Okay, thank you. We're required to renew it. That's really the only.
Every 2 years, we're
Okay.
required to renew it.
Thank you. Any questions, comments on that? Okay. May we have the roll, please?
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Ms. Cotter?
Yes.
Mr. Byrd?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Agenda item 12, public comments. We have 2 people signed up this evening. The first is Peg Duffy.
I understand agenda item 11.10, but it doesn't negate need for the concept that's there. Unfortunately, getting over the perception that the only path to success is a degree is a hurdle that many suburban districts have to deal with it. And admit it or not, we have an ingrained prejudice that it's okay for somebody else's kid to be a construction worker, plumber, electrician, but not my kid. Where would all of the degrees sitting in here tonight be without the auto repair guy or the power company lineman? How about the elevator adjuster who made sure I didn't get caught between floors tonight? If we really believe in career as well as college readiness, we will provide the course offerings so that with the new middle school guidance curriculum, counselors can point students to actual options earlier. Am I saying bring back shop courses? Maybe so, I don't know. And while you're conversing with all the powerful at OSBA, how about rattling some cages about the department, amending state requirements to accept equally challenging but more appropriate options, say other than the algebra courses, for technical students. Give middle school students a path other than pure academics, and maybe by the time they're in high school, at-risk students will be more motivated to see the potential in sticking it out. Find opportunities in the various trades that we see all the time are crying for qualified employees. Now, like that topic on others, I speak for other people, not just myself. So when you answer things, please answer for them. Too many times when I ask questions, I find the answer is, we'll get back to you. Well, you can be plural, not just me. You, all the people out there in the community. So try as much as possible, please, to answer with public answers so other people hear about it. On a slightly different subject, I understand that this year Heritage suffers from the bane of overcapacity. It's a communicable affliction, I guess, that seems to rotate through our schools. I have been told that last week students were informed that starting early in this week, they'd have new schedules and in some cases different teachers. Oh yes, and perhaps a teacher who will be split between 2 buildings. Kids without lockers who are now being required to haul their existence around like a homeless transient aren't going to disappear. This bubble is going to move on to the high school. Where is the breaking point? When is enough enough? Challenging curriculum requires space, and we don't even seem to have space for what we offer now. We have a problem that can't wait much longer for a solution.
Thank you, Ms. Duffy. Doug Rankin.
I want to thank those of you who were at the tactical or strategic goals meeting we had. Had about 150 at the first meeting, and then about 50. I was graciously greeted for some reason. Tracy and all the smiling faces that were there. Bart, I want to congratulate you for an excellent job. I know what it takes. I was a comptroller. Had 26 installations and training and doctrine command. I won't go on beyond that. And then, where's Greg? Greg, thanks for greeting me. Okay. Let's see, today's 9/11. Last year, I asked some seniors from different schools of the significance of 9/11. I got emptiness. They didn't know what 9/11 was. I said 2001, 0. I guess the main lesson in here is from Congress and others in Washington didn't learn from history, because there was a previous bombing in New York City. And then on a second point on history, I love history, okay? It was mandatory. The Air War College and the Naval War College, plus some other places. Anyway, Black Hawk Down. I asked some of the seniors in Westerville, tell me about Black Hawk Down, and they asked me, what are you talking about? I said, well, there was, the U.S. brought many ships of loads of food to a place called Somalia. In return, the Muslim Somalians attacked our Rangers. They killed 39. But the most significant thing about that, for the first time I saw on TV, and this includes Vietnam, I saw one of our national news people show a naked body of an American soldier dragging through the street. Now, for some reason, that hit me hard. I could go on about that. Refugees, in the budget right now, it's $1.2 trillion. And then our last commander-in-chief put another $500 billion for the last fiscal year. And then I took a look at the individuals responsible for the administration. I did a little search on the internet. I got 38 pages. And I had to really dig. But then for each of the 501Cs that are refugee centers, plus you have churches, the average director, national director, gets over $200,000 a year. And then for, each of these places gets $700 each for a refugee. So it's an ongoing thing, and this is only for about 3 months. So you constantly have to be looking for more and bringing more in. And then what else? Anyway, no, the individuals get $1,200 a month. So that's a lot of money when you're taking a look at different areas of what the Westerville schools are responsible for. Win-win, we get $34 million, something like that. But what is the other cost? The dispatch came out and said, we're not a sanctuary city. We've been a de facto, then later on they declared, hey, Columbus has been a de facto city for, I guess you'd call them immigrants, and it used to be called illegal immigrants. and undocumented. So anyway, it keeps on going. But anyway, I wanted to, next point, I guess I've been here about 2 other times in the last 6 years. And you have an opportunity for junior ROTC. It's a great program. I know the Air Force has a great program in it. Kids have a chance to contribute to the community. Plus, they have an opportunity to... I heard a voice. Okay, thanks. Okay. Well, I hear voices at night, so
Well,
maybe that's my problem.
No, Mr. Hershiser keeps the time for us, and everybody gets 5 minutes, and so he was just saying that the 5 minutes had elapsed.
Okay, but anyway, you get full scholarship. Plus, it's amazing. It used to be only in the junior and senior year, you get $150 a month in ROTC. Now it starts at $300 a month all the way to $500. And here, Air Force and other services have great labs,
Right.
okay? State-of-the-art labs. And if you don't, you do 4 years and you get a
Right.
wealth of experience. Okay, honor code.
We need to, I need to wrap up the comments. It's been 5 minutes, and I just,
Okay, time goes. Anyway, we got to take a look at the honor code. Air Force Academy just court-martialed in the last 2 years 300 cadets because they were consuming something called marijuana. You don't want a jet fighter pilot going Mach 2, phasing out.
right.
Okay, thanks a lot.
We do appreciate your comments, Doug. Thank you. Thank you for
And I want to
coming.
appreciate your graciousness and...
Thank you.
And my comments were made from a direct viewpoint, trying to make everybody, the place better.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for comments tonight. Thank you to both who shared with us this evening. Moving on to board comments. Anyone have any brief things they'd like to say?
Just briefly, Mr. Rankin, I'm happy to have a conversation with you about ROTC after session. There's a requirement from the federal government for retired 06 to be in place and part of the program, and that is one of the biggest challenges with ROTC programs, as well as all of the branches have put ROTC expansion on hold for the last 5 years. And I'll touch base with you about the particulars, but it's one of the very first things that I looked into when I joined the board.
Thank you for your comment
Yep.
there. We also need to take a look at Peg Duffy's, putting shop actions.
Absolutely, understood.
Thank you very much. Any other further brief comments? Hearing none, agenda item 14, the board will meet in regular session Monday, September 25, Monday, October 16, 2017, 6 p.m. here in the board training room. Moving on to agenda item 15.01, may I have a motion and a second to move into executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters? May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. Just to let you all know, we will be moving into, if we vote on it, we will be moving into executive session and adjourning from there, not coming back into this room. Mr. Griffith, please call the roll.
Dr. Nestor Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Byrd,
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Velardo.
Yes, we now move into executive session. Thank you all for your attendance this evening.